Hey guys, Shadylikeatree here, and welcome into my Batman Arkham Knight review. What you're going to be seeing here is some PS4 Batman Arkham Knight gameplay from early on in the game. I forget exactly where in the game this is, but I've been playing for about a day. Hopefully there are no major spoilers. I don't believe there are. Like I said, I think I'd been playing for just a couple of hours when I decided, you know what, I should probably capture some footage for a review so you guys can have something to watch while I talk about this game. As with all of my Batman, or well, all of my reviews, I should say, there are kind of two parts to this. There is a review part, and then there will be a spoiler warning, and then there is a discussion part. And the discussion part will be heavily spoilered, but the review part will be not at all. There might be very minor things or things that you can pick up on from the commercials or things on TV, but nothing that anyone who hasn't played the game wouldn't already know or shouldn't already know. If you're not interested in picking this game up, or you've already gotten the game and want to skip kind of my review parts of the game and just get right into the discussion about the story and those types of things, feel free to do so. I will include in the description kind of a time code so you can go ahead and skip to that part. But there will be kind of things in the review that I think will be pertinent for the discussion of this video. So, moving along with the review, I'm going to come right out and say that this is the best game in the franchise, hands down, bar none, in my opinion. It had a great way to end the game. That's all I'm going to say about that. I paid $60 for the game, and I feel like I certainly got every drop of my money's worth. I'm unsold, however, on the future DLC packs that are supposed to come out. You're supposed to pay $40 and be able to play as Batgirl, I believe, is the first one, and then I don't know if the other three have been announced yet. But I got the Day 1 edition, and those DLCs weren't very long. They each took less than an hour. I'm talking about the Harley Quinn and the Red Hood editions. I think I beat both in about 45 minutes to an hour, but the way I play as Batman is very slow and steady, and there's not a whole lot of quickness in any of my takedowns, which you'll see some of that, I believe, in this gameplay. This gameplay also heavily features the Batmobile, which is kind of a new feature. Which, speaking of the Batmobile, I do like the new added Batmobile elements. It certainly makes, kind of breaks up the gameplay and kind of makes things, kind of breaks up the monotony of just being Batman. You get to ride around in a Batman-like tank, and you get to blow up drones and things like that. It also helps with travel across Gotham, makes it less tedious and whatnot, because in previous games, kind of floating between the buildings, to me, I was not the best at that, so I find that driving is much more laid back, much more enjoyable, and generally easier to handle and have fun with. I should say that the Batmobile plays a large part in the story, but not too much that it bogs it down. It's used for finding Riddler trophies, parts of missions where you have to, like, pull this thing down using a grappling hook, or move this thing, or blow up this wall, or what have you. But it can be remotely controlled, and that kind of adds another element to it, kind of the puzzle-solving elements of this game. I should say that I've played this game to 100% completion. I've played everything that I'm able to play. I've beaten the game 100%. I know the final ending, which we'll talk about later in the discussion portion of this video. But having said that I'm going to complete the game, there's something to be said because I'm not a completionist, and that tells you how much fun and how much enjoyment I've gotten out of this game to take the time to spend the 18+ hours and finish it off. All in all, it took me several multiple hour sessions to completely complete the game, to 100% it as you were. I didn't right away kind of get the grasp of some of the Batmobile's mechanics, and kind of how to do some of the things, but I was able to kind of learn how the things were used and eventually kind of get a hang of it. I would say in total I've probably spent between 18 and 24 hours in the game over the last week or so. I did not get the game at launch, mostly due to just how my paydays work, and I didn't have the cash right then and there, so I had to wait a week to pick it up. But I did technically have it pre-ordered because I put my $5 down to pay for the extra DLC, which was part of the game anyway. So I don't really feel like I pre-ordered it, even though I did. In this game, there are a number of other opportunities to play other heroes besides just Batman. I'm not going to say who any of those are, but there's a number of opportunities where you and another person are fighting to achieve the same goal, and in achieving that same goal, you're able to switch back and forth, perform dual takedowns, things like that. This is another added element that I think has been missing and kind of lacking in the previous games and would have kind of added to the excitement and fun. It's not every day that you get to play as these other characters because they don't really generally have their standalone games, and it was just another added element. That's really what it is for me, is adding the element. And what you saw right there is another new element, I believe. It is the fear takedown. You saw me take two guys down instantly by pressing the square and creating the fear takedown maneuver. That move is you have to charge it up actually by doing a silent takedown, but then you're able to take down multiple people. I believe it's up to 5 at one time once it's fully upgraded. The upgrade system, there's a lot of points and a lot of it that applies. I believe there's 6 or 7 different things. There's your bat suit, the Batmobile weapons, gadgets, gadget upgrades, things along those lines, all of which I feel like help make Batman better and help kind of make the game easier in the later levels. I also think that the new things, as you acquire them, it kind of helps you learn. You don't just get everything thrown at you all at once and you're stuck. So I think that those different gadgets kind of help with the monotony of the game. Something I want to mention to you guys right now is there are a ton of jump scares in this game. I'm not a big fan of scary horror movies, and I get that this Batman game and a lot of the newer Batman games are all about fear. And kind of fear the enemy, but there are a ton of jump scares throughout the game. So if you're someone who doesn't like jump scares and it like really freaks you out for extended periods of time, I would highly recommend maybe not getting this game or watching it. It's a lot, and I was kind of surprised by it, and I didn't think it was necessary at all, but on some level they just felt the need to include that, and I was not a fan of that. So just be mindful of that as you're playing forward. Maybe you don't care, maybe you like jump scares, but for someone like me, that was not something that I wanted or enjoyed. As a whole, I didn't necessarily find the game scary. It was just the few handfuls of moments where things would pop out at you that you weren't really expecting for, that really kind of just made it that little bit of scary. It wasn't like a constant horror movie like a Slender or anything like that. It was just 10 weird moments or so, 15 moments maybe, where something just said surprise and Bob's your uncle. One of the things I had a problem with in this game was the gadget transitions, and kind of moving between gadgets felt kind of, it didn't feel kind of, it felt unnatural. It wasn't easy. It wasn't it just wasn't, it wasn't natural, it wasn't good, it wasn't as useful as one would like. It's difficult because sometimes you need to use like you need to use your explosive gel, and then you need to switch to your electric shock charger gun thing, and it just wasn't that easy, it wasn't that simple. And I would have liked that system to maybe be a little bit better, maybe move it around, have a different, better, quicker, what have you, system for switching between gadgets, because that would have been ultimately what would have been better and what would have been kind of more user-friendly, I think. One of the things I really liked about this particular Batman game was the different people they used in the various characters. I couldn't recognize any of the actors right away. I actually had to go back and look. We do know that Kevin Conroy stars as the voice of Batman because he is the voice of Batman, in my opinion. He's done it in many series a long time, just as Mark Hamill has done the Joker for many, many years for a number of different series. And you don't know the actors as much, which is good. I didn't know that Troy Baker was doing Two-Face and some other faces. We had the usual suspects in this game, but at the same time, it's just they sound like how they should sound, and they are how they should be. And I really appreciate the team at Rocksteady getting that correct. Having bad characters or bad actors can really pull you out of a game and pull you out of an experience, but at the same time, having someone who's not right but good also kind of hurts that experience. But I think they nailed it right on the head with that, and I'm very happy with how that kind of shaked out. One thing I'll say about the story in this section is that it really keeps your interest. It had me guessing the whole time. I noticed there were some people who, in some reviews I saw yesterday and the day before, that there were some people who weren't surprised, but I absolutely was, and I generally am able to guess kind of where the writers of the story are going. I had no idea, but then again, I'm not as familiar with the comics as some of these other people are. I'm not a super comic book guy. I've read a few. I know, the Killing Joke, kind of the big ones, but I don't know a lot of the major, the multiple, 75-part Batman series. I just don't know those. I wish I did, to say the least, but I just don't. I guess I'll end this section with saying that I really only have 2 complaints about the game. I think the Riddler trophies, with how the Riddler is used in this game, are tedious to operate and kind of do, but they're really easy to figure out. I wish there would have been fewer of them that were more difficult to find and or access and required, a good deal of thinking to try to figure out. I thought some of them were just like, here, pull on this thing and here's a trophy. That's not hard, that's not difficult, that's just tedious. And, if they had been more multi-level trophies, I think that would have certainly been better. But at the end of the day, I just thought there were too many and they were tedious, especially with the Joker's other involvement in this game. And that's all I'll really say about that for those of you who don't want spoilers. They're just more annoying than fun, I guess. And then also, sometimes the game's controls, namely how to execute various takedown moves, are hard to execute, or the notification doesn't pop up right away, which makes me think there's a glitch or I just am doing something wrong. And so then I walk away from the thing, and it takes me a while to figure out. There was one boss in particular where I didn't know how to finish the fight, so to speak, and I actually had to replay it because I couldn't figure it out. And then I ended up actually going to YouTube to figure out what had actually happened. And that was kind of disconcerting to me, something as I was kind of going through that I didn't really like or want or have to deal with. But that could have been a little bit better, but that's just sort of nitpicking. Like I said, this still is my favorite Batman game. I still think this game is the best Arkham Knight game, or the best Arkham game, and best Arkham Batman game of the series, and it's really all you can ask for in a Batman game, and I think they absolutely got this game right.
Spoiler warning, everything will be told. Everything!
Okay guys, you've had your spoiler alert. Everything will be told. Everything, as my friend Worm says. We're going to get right into the discussion now, and we're going to just start off with the first part of the game. Firstly, I loved how the game started. When you incinerate the Joker's lifeless body and the little bit of the foreshadowing with the song Under My Skin, kind of saying that, the Joker will in fact become part of Batman, I thought was really kind of cool. It creates a perfect moment to start the game. It kind of shows the Joker and kind of ending the Joker's journey and kind of setting up what happens next as a big what the hell moment. And you're kind of like in this place of, is what I'm seeing is real? Did what happened before not happen? And then as it's slowly explained to you throughout the game that the Joker is part of your imagination and it's part of your hallucination and the fear gas getting to you, it kind of makes more sense and kind of helps you to ground the game in some reality. You immediately move from that moment to the first person of that's locked up in the GCPD cells on Halloween night, a police officer who's exposed to Scarecrow's fear toxin at a diner and shoots a number of people. It's jarring and it sets up the dark ride that you're about to take for the rest of the game. And the two scenes, the scene with the Joker that's kind of relatively peaceful and kind of has that bit of foreshadowing element to it, also kind of sets up with this scene, and they kind of contradict each other, yet they also complement each other at the same time, which is something that I really like, I really appreciate, and it just starts the game off masterful. In that opening scene, I wasn't first sure exactly what to do. I was expecting the Joker to wake up and have sort of a jump scare. That did not happen, but then it tells you to push the incinerate button, and you do, which is, something that I think is very satisfying to kind of end the Joker, especially after what's happened in the previous games. But I wasn't exactly sure that you were actually doing it and that it wasn't all a ruse. I thought maybe the Joker had a doppelganger or something with it wasn't correct. But at the same time, you know, they have that thing, you know, that voiceover saying, and this is how the Batman died or whatever. And it really sets up the end of the game. And you're like, wait, the Batman dies? So you keep expecting Batman to not survive, or you keep expecting Batman to have to pass the torch. So you know the Batman died. Does he pass the torch? Does he live? Does he die? What happens? But the legend of the Batman is not Bruce Wayne, so we aren't sure how that kind of affects things moving forward in the game. And I think that that sets up the rest of the game very nicely. It had all the different villains that you would come to want, expect to know. It had Two-Face, it had Harley. The Joker makes a rather annoying appearance, more on that later. We had Harley, Scarecrow, I said. Having Scarecrow as the main villain makes the game about fear, and that's, you know, that's, I think, an interesting way to kind of take the play on the game. But at the end of the day, I definitely am a fan of you know, all the villains they had in there. Penguin was in there as well, and Firefly. We had the Fire Chief ended up being technically a villain or a bad guy based on his actions. And so there were really a number, you know, in the DLC we had Black Mask, but for those of you who didn't play that, I'm sorry. But we just had a bunch of different bad guys, and I think it really kind of spoke to the lore, and it just added that extra element, which is what this game is really about, the extra added elements that just make the game stand out from the previous one. Speaking of the Joker, I found the Joker and his quips and sayings to be annoying. I don't really think he added anything to the game until late in the game, but that first surprise when he shows up the first time is yes, it is surprising. And it's kind of a shock to the system, but at the same time, I don't feel like he added a whole lot, like especially when it came to the Joker missions. I didn't defeat the Joker, or I didn't defeat the single player campaign until I was about 50% done with all the side missions or the side quests. So I think maybe if I had just focused on the main story right away and then done the side quests, that things would have been different. But I think the way it kind of shook out, I got a little too much Joker, and I didn't really care for it or like it or want it to kind of happen. He showed up at all the wrong times, especially when Barbara, you know, supposedly commits suicide the first time. And then I learned through the game that whenever the Joker showed up, to not trust what I was seeing or hearing, because that often meant that I was hallucinating to the fear toxin, and that whatever it may be might not actually be happening. So I kind of learned to trust that. I do kind of agree that a lot of the Jokering and the Joker's kind of parts of the movie maybe were a little bit supernatural for some people who wanted a more traditional Batman game per se. I think that later on in the game there's the scene where you're doing FPS Joker, and you have a number of those tasks. You take the Joker Batmobile out, and you kind of do that in your mind. I think that those are certainly you know, good parts to the game and fun, and I don't want to take away from those moments, but at the same time, I'd had a lot of the Joker early on, and I was a little fed up, to be honest. But those moments really made the story and really kind of hammered home the ending that we received and that we got and that we understood. Another thing this game had is it had a load of comic book lore in this game. We had sections directly taken out of The Killing Joke, especially when it shows Barbara being shot in the back when the Joker shows up at her apartment. It did not show the rape scene, which I was kind of fortunate and glad that it didn't have. I think that's a little too over the top for this game, and I thought that was a very adult thing of The Killing Joke, and kind of the Hall of Mirrors, which was mentioned. Actually, they do mention that Jim Gordon went through that, but they don't specifically talk about how it kind of affects him, as it were. There was also references to A Death in the Family, A Circus of Strange, with the appearance of Pig and his soldiers that have to be knocked out because they don't actually take damage, which I thought was just really odd. and they're also, there's also the Nightfall reference to the end of the game. There's the reference to the Hush comic. And then, of course, the whole Jason Todd wanting revenge and being the Arkham Knight / Red Hood is straight out of the Red Hood series. So some of them are more obvious than others. Maybe you guys saw some ones that I missed or know a little bit more about the comics. I'm not a super huge comic fan, but I do know kind of the main stories of a bunch of them. Speaking of lore, when during the game you think Barbara commits suicide, but it turns out to not be true, I got very, very, very angry. Like, I got, like, physically angry where I just put down the controller and I'm like, really? Did that have to happen? Now, granted, it turned out later in the game that it was the Joker, when the Joker showed up, and I didn't quite yet have that part figured out, that whenever the Joker came, you were hallucinating, that was the case, but I just thought she had died, and I was like, wow, really? How are we going to tell Tim? How are we going to deal with this? And there are so many twists throughout the game that we didn't really get, we didn't really understand, and I was happy and glad that they happened. But that was one of them where I was just like, did that really need to happen? Is that really a thing that we want? And I was just really mad about it, and that kind of fueled my interest in the story moving forward. I said to myself, I was like, let's go get this bastard, let's kill the Scarecrow, let's do this, let's make it happen, and let's put an end to their suffering and the pain that they're causing. And that was great. As I mentioned before, I did like the Joker's FPS scene towards the end of the very good time. It was kind of freaky, kind of scary, but it also shows that Batman was closing in on blocking the Joker out, which is something I liked, I appreciated, and I'm glad happened. I really like the ending to the main game in the sense of things are not quite finished, and then the Nightfall ending was great. I think it really set the franchise up with a good way to kind of cap it off and kind of just end the game the best way possible. And it kind of left the door open for future Batman games with how it ended. Are we going to have, Azrael, or are we going to have something else? But at the same time, we just had it better. And I was really happy about that and kind of glad that it ended the way it did. One of the things I liked that I thought was kind of spoilery was that we don't go to the Batcave, which to me would seem to be unnecessary. Instead, we go to the Clock Tower, Bat Computer, and go to Wayne Enterprises a couple of times. I think going to the Batcave would have just added too much to the game, and it would have felt like going out of the way, like it did in the previous games. I want to say Arkham Asylum was most guilty of this, perhaps. And it was just really annoying to have to go to the Batcave every time you wanted to do something, or every time a mission ended. I didn't really like going back there. With all of Batman's intelligence and wisdom and money, I feel like everything should have been able to just be brought to him so he didn't have to keep wasting his time going back and forth, especially since this game only takes place in the matter of one night, which is Halloween. I loved how the story involved all the Robins. After all, we have Dick Grayson, who's now Nightwing, and it made for an excellent twist to find that Jason Todd, who everyone and their mom thought was dead, actually isn't. I know some of you probably saw that ending coming because you are more familiar with the comic books than I am, but when I saw him pop open his head and he had that J on his face, and I'm like, after especially you went through the Joker hallucination missions, I'm like, my body is not ready for this. How is this a thing? How can this happen? What is going on? And I just wasn't ready for that. I also liked in this game, and something that I thought brought, again, another element, which is really what this game is, just adding elements to the previous games, was the Catwoman, Poison Ivy, how they were kind of working with you and not against you. I know that in years past they can sometimes be considered to be villains, even though they're more anti-hero than villain. And that's just what you have to live with. And I like that you're able to work with Catwoman and you're able to work with Ivy. And Ivy kind of redeems herself in the series because that's something that not all too often happens with characters like her. And I was glad to see her redeem herself. Ivy in the Gotham TV series is kind of an ally to Bruce Wayne early on. And that's something that that I really think kind of adds to it, is to have those newer canons kind of be brought forth and kind of are able to you know, kind of be included in the lore, as it were. It also doesn't hurt that both Catwoman and Poison Ivy are really easy on the eye. Anyway, friends, that's really all I wanted to talk about in this video, or everything I had. If there's any discussion you'd like to add down in the comments, feel free to let me know. I look forward to discussing this game with you and anyone who has played it. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Also, in the description, you will find links to my Twitter, Twitch, and other important social media accounts that you can find me and we can discuss this game. I look forward to having more discussions on it and future games very soon. Thanks, guys, for watching. Take care, DFTBA, and I'll see you next time.